Good evening and welcome to the May edition of the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force here in Durham, North Carolina. So glad to again see these wonderful faces and the passion and the hearts that accompany those beautiful smiles. We'll ask Marsha, our co-chair, to give us our values for today.
Thanks. Well, I offer you all the value of compassion, our ability to feel and to care about the sufferings of others and to act upon that experience. And it just feels like compassion fuels our mission. Can we agree that that will be the value that will hold the center of this meeting tonight? Great, thank you all. Turn it back to you, Xavier.
Well, we have a space here for announcements if anyone has any announcements to make. Our liaison to the Board of Education, Board Member Lewis, was going to speak on her Day of Remembrance coming up on May 15th. She is probably still trying to make it from another event. I don't know if I can share my screen.
I'll give you that ability, 1 sec.
Okay, I do have a copy of the flyer that has been created for that. Is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is a collaboration between the City of the County and the Board of Education. A Day of Remembrance on Monday down at the Bull at the CCB Plaza at 5:30, Monday, May 15th, this coming Monday, downtown Durham. Joining Durham's leaders in a moment of silence to represent a continued show of unity to support youth safety and wellness, in remembrance of youth lost to violence and collaboration between the 3 local governing bodies. This is, again, as you see, a collaborative effort. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes to make this happen. We want to thank Board Member Lewis for spearheading this and getting it started with the Board of Education and getting the buy-in from our other 2 elected bodies. And we hope that as many as possible can attend. Are there any other announcements or questions? And I believe our own Samuel Scarborough will be one of the speakers, if not mistaken. I know I saw his name on a list, an agenda. Oh, here she is.
There she is.
We were just talking, we just shared the flyer and didn't know if you had any wonderful things you want to say about the event that's coming up on May 15th.
Yes, thank you for that. I was trying to find the Zoom site, juggling kids and dinner. So
life.
Thanks for starting the conversation. So yeah, it's, May 15th, Monday, May 15th is a day of remembrance. We're just asking for the community to take a moment of silence at 10 o'clock, no matter where you are. Go ahead and set your alarm 10 o'clock and just to remembering the value that we each have within each other and the unity and connection that we have together. Just take time, a moment to breathe, right? And then we'll have guest speakers at the CCB Plaza at 5:30. And it is to center the youth voices. We have 4 speakers from the DPS Students for Wellness. We have, Samuel Scarborough. He agreed to speak as well, along with reading the resolution signed by the city and the Board of Education, and hopefully also will be signed by the county in their upcoming meeting. So just really been just grateful for Marsha and Xavier, all the feedback you all have offered in the planning process. Grateful for Dr. Boone and Karen. This has been a layered approach. So, Dr. Boone had a youth conversation at the end of March, and then I did a student conversation at the end of April. And then we have another, the Youth Civic Hackathon was May 6th. Then actually on May 13th, EPIC, the organization that I give leadership to, Empowered Parents and Community, is doing an ACES and resilience workshop with Dr. Boone, teaching parents how to respond to student wellness with this event happening on May 15th. So there's just trying to take this layered approach in meeting youth in different places, meeting them where they are, giving them voice, letting them know that we care, we're holding them in care, and that, you know, they can hear from each other, that each person cares, and just remembering that we're all connected, and just looking forward to the day, to the conversations. And this is just a pit stop because we have to have more conversations beyond here, beyond this moment. And it's this layered approach, it's this collaboration that has to happen for this work to go forward and to be long lasting in perpetuity. So thank you for this time and space. Thank you all for all your work. And I didn't want to pull you all in because you guys are making recommendations for the long term, right? You guys are making recommendations for what does safety and wellness look like for the Durham community at large. You all have been at this for 18 months or more. I can't even remember. So this is just like an immediate need that came up, and we just want to be supportive as the city, county, and Board of Education. I'm taking leadership, but we'll definitely, you know, again, this is the foundation of some of the work we're looking to happen for the long term with the recommendations you all are giving. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all the time you've given and support.
I believe Mike had his hand up.
Not an announcement so much as just a germ of an idea to put out there, not to discuss tonight, but for the roundtables to be thinking of, especially as we're moving towards putting together final reports that hopefully we'll have time to talk about. And that is to highlight in your draft final reports where issues of language justice and access and equity are coming up. It's come up more than once in the CLS roundtable. It came up today in our conversation about Goodrun, about not enough Spanish-speaking CJRC providers for theirs and needs, and it's come up, you know, with the jail, and it comes up over, and I imagine it has or will come up in all the other roundtables. So if you're able to, you know, highlight those needs as you're seeing with crisis response and violence interruption and school safety and youth, et cetera, then that might give us time to pull those things into kind of a holistic set of proposals that the full task force could put forward as part of our final report, giving us the time we need to reach out to those providers. So it's not just a general, we need language equity and just, yeah, but some specifics that we can print to the city and the county about what does that term mean in terms of additional resources needed. And we could then highlight that as sort of its own overarching area as part of our final report come end of summer.
Thank you so much for noting that. We're talking about conversations over the last 5 or 6 minutes. We're talking about conversations, we're talking about community talking to each other, and language justice for Durham it should be a norm. And we've all been in spaces where that's still not the case. So we appreciate all of the aforementioned efforts to center youth voice. Again, that should be a Durham norm. And it does take a village in a community to actually be intentional about that. And want to appreciate Board Member Lewis's highlight on the Day of Remembrance. And also I have one more, not quite an announcement, but just a correction on the agenda that was sent out to you. I put June 7th as our next meeting, which is the first Wednesdays. Should have been June 14th. Not that anybody looked at that fine print, but just for the record, it should be corrected. And because you'll get the calendar invites, but no, we did not move next month's meeting up a week. Any other announcements? Yes.
Exactly. Just to add to what I said, I just also wanted to recognize Jesse and Samuel, who came to the 425 community conversations. And just Jesse, he jumped right into leading a table of youth discussion and was a trusted adult. So like you guys are just showing up, showing out for the youth. And I'm so glad you're here. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure I recognize them as well.
Thank you very much.
And I would just like to, I'd just like to encourage everyone that hopefully everybody has this announcement for the Day of Remembrance in their email, and to please share it with your networks. Let everybody know that this is an opportunity to be present in the life of youth in Durham. Gun violence is the #1 cause of death for our children. And one of the things that we learned very clearly from the play State of Urgency is, and what you're doing, Board Member Lewis, is showing the children that we're here, we're present, accounted for, and we care. So I just encourage everybody to share this announcement and just see y'all Monday, 15th at the Bull at 5:30. Thanks again.
Thank you. We are going to continue to stay on the topic of Youth Voice. If you weren't aware, there is a new organization, a new effort in Durham called the Durham Students for Mental Health. They will be represented at the Day of Remembrance. And we do have representation here. Isaiah Palmer is one of the members of the Durham Students for Mental Health. We want to give you a chance to talk about the work that your group has been doing in our community, as well as the survey that you sent out. So welcome to this task force meeting, and I'll turn the floor over to you. Isaiah, are you there? We'll come back.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, great.
I didn't hear you guys. I didn't know you were talking about me.
Yes. The floor is yours if you want to kind of let the community know, those who are attuned to what we're doing, to know about the work that you're doing with Durham Students for Mental Health. We appreciate your attendance.
Oh yeah, for sure. So what I do and what I help do is spreading awareness in my community and at schools for mental health and more mental health resources. This started I think it started last month or 2 months ago, where an incident had happened at our school. And I felt like this shouldn't be normalized, or things like that shouldn't be normalized in school areas or on school grounds. And so I just felt like somebody needs to take action. If nobody wanted to stand up, if schools didn't want to stand up and do it, then a student that goes through things like this and that is like actually in the building witnessing stuff should actually be standing up and helping. And the group that I'm with right now, we've accomplished a lot. We want to accomplish more. We have so much more on our list, on our bucket list to check off. And we just do a lot of going around helping, seeing what really needs to be fixed in our schools and communities and stuff, and we're trying to make our group available to anyone, and anyone who wants to join, wants to come hang out, talk. We really want to make it available to any person that attends a DPS school.
Thank you, Isaiah. At the hackathon, we were told about a website, I believe, that your group has. Do you know the URL for that you can share with us?
Yes. If it's okay, can I put it in the chat?
That would be perfect.
Okay. So we have an Instagram and a Twitter that we post on weekly.
And we will definitely make sure that gets out and learn more about your organization. Jesse has his hand up.
There we go. Thank you. Hi, Isaiah. I was just curious to learn a little bit more about yourself and some of the others leading with the Durham Students for Mental Health group, at least you and Andres. What school are y'all at? And like, I wasn't sure if you all were located in one school or if there was a collective of Durham students from across multiple schools. Just curious to get to know you a little bit more.
Oh, we both attend, and the whole group of DPS mental health students, we all attend Hillside New Tech, which is currently now Durham School of Technology.
Right, got you. Yeah, okay, I just wasn't sure. That's helpful to know. just in thinking about kind of like scope and range and where the connections can align. Thank you. Is there anything else that's coming to mind that feels like important to share just based on the things y'all have been able to do so far, like a particular story or a concrete example of something that's felt really good since you all have been organizing?
Yes. So when we first started this, we didn't realize, like, we didn't really think that we would have as much people being interested in what we do. So it's really exciting to see people looking at us and just saying these guys are actually doing something, and they found a problem. They figured out what was the problem, and it's actually trying to target it by making a group, going out, helping, going to board meetings, trying to get the word and spread awareness. And I just feel like the accomplishments that we have actually, like, it's just something crazy. I wouldn't think I would be in this spot right now. Like,
Yeah,
I was just a kid playing basketball, trying to get good grades, trying to go to college. Really won't trying to do too much, but actually got out of my comfort zone and started doing things that would actually make a difference.
yeah, that's really helpful feedback. I think it mirrors some of what um Giovannia mentioned with the community conversations event that happened in April. There was a student that was like, we need to do more of this. How do we continue? And in my sense, it felt like there's real people power in the room, and youth, high schoolers, young people. History has shown us that y'all coming together sometimes is even more incredible and more powerful. And I think sometimes that's because people might underestimate what young people can do, and you show us in real time what you're able to do. And I'm certainly happy to partner with young people who are interested in organizing locally or even more broadly. I think there's some imagination even to think about what does it look like to take the lessons that y'all are learning and the messaging and narratives that y'all are lifting up, not just in a Durham context, but taking it to Raleigh, because there are stakeholders there that need to know that young people in Durham are organizing and care about mental health. And I think a lot of times we think that there are local leaders who don't care, but the reality is a lot of times local leaders do care, and they're not set up to win. They're set up to fail because the General Assembly legislators in Raleigh are not setting us up to win. That's the phrase I'll use. So it just means a lot that you're here, that you're connected with other young people that care enough to do something. And I'm hopeful that that energy continues to grow, and that together we figure out how to do more together, for lack of a better phrase. So thank you for being here and for sharing a little bit more about that. I hope that you feel heartened and encouraged that people are taking you seriously and see the value and the inherent worth that you have to bear as another community member here in Durham. So thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Jesse. Sammy has his hand. Right?
Yes, I have a quick question. First of all, Isaiah, you and Andreas might know my brother over there at Durham School of Technology, Logan. But secondly, for my question, I wanted to see what in particular you could see this task force helping you all do in terms of achieving the goals you set out for yourselves.
What was the last part? I couldn't hear it. It cut out.
Yeah. What is the I guess in terms of like the task force, what specific things could we try to do to make sure we support you all's work and help you all achieve the goals y'all set out to achieve?
One of my main things that I would expect is one of my my biggest things to do is I just want people to spread it. Like just spread it as much as you can, because especially like doing most social media stuff with people collabing, doing a whole bunch of stuff. A lot more stuff spreads on social media than through in person, because some people aren't really, don't come in the street, please don't. Sorry, my little brother. But I think one of my main
Oh, I think we lost
Did
him.
we lose him? Yeah.
We did.
We will amplify his voice and the voices of young people and spread the word as much as we can. That part I did hear. And great question, Samuel. I'm so glad you asked that.
Absolutely. Thank you for those questions. And of course, this gave me an official reason to scroll through Instagram during the meeting. So I was checking out that page, real great content, very accessible.
Are members of
even-
our youth roundtable already in conversation with him and his group?
Not yet, not yet.
Presumably will be.
Absolutely.
To Samuel's point, to help them guide them towards recommendations to.
Most definitely. And I am aware, I have not yet seen the video, but I know that they did present to the Board of Education recently to talk about mental health days. It's one of the things that they're advocating for.
It
Yeah,
was real
that's some of the,
powerful.
oh, go for it, Trustee Lewis.
I was gonna say it was really powerful, the students that came and everything that they shared in that moment. I think we had a few students at the April Community Conversations led by youth, and Dr. Mbenga addressed that mental health wellness day and what he's doing to work towards making that a reality. That his team is already on it, and we'll get some feedback. And one of our young leaders, youth organizers, said, well, when will we know, when are you gonna do it, and how will we know that it's happening? So wanting to hold Ms. Dr. Mbenga accountable for the deliverable. Isaiah wasn't there, but again, keep saying it. We will most likely have media presence out on May 15th, Day of Remembrance. Isaiah is one of the speakers, along with some of his other members. So we are amplifying their voice, and I couldn't be more excited because this is for the youth, and the youth shall lead and we shall listen.
Thank you so much. And that Instagram address is at DPS Mental Health. For those who are not accessing our chat, at DPS Mental Health is how to find them on Instagram. We're going to stay in this same mode and move on to an update on the Youth Hackathon that happened on Saturday. Dr. Boone.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. So whenever we do anything with youth, it's always an amazing opportunity to hear and to listen and to follow their lead. So we had about 500, that's in the future, about 25, between 25 and 30 youth that attended. And let me move this forward. And so this is what our hackathon was based on. Our imaginations are our superpower. And of course, we agreed on respect, collaborate, innovate, heal. And so these are some pictures of the tables with young people and the conversations that they were having, led by trusted adults. We did do some arts and crafts things. It really helps young people to think and to have something to show for their own creativity. And so these are some of the drawings and paintings that they did. They also decided to do karaoke. One of the things that I was really happy about, I've enjoyed every single meeting that we've had with young people. And this is just building, as Javanya, Ms. Lewis, board member said, it is building one on another, and we plan to have another event in June. One of the things we talked about is traveling this opportunity to hear from youth to the PACs with districts in Durham, so that there wouldn't be transportation issues or things like that. And so we plan to work with Parks and Rec so that we can be at Walltown, Holton Career and Resource Center, and places like that, so that we can capture young people that's closer to where they live. So we have 3 lightning rounds. What does safety or feeling safe mean to you? What do we mean when we talk about guns and safety? The final round, what are our big ideas? Let your imagination soar. So we were going to do a good idea, even better idea, best idea, but we decided that all of them were best ideas and didn't want to differentiate in that way. We also had a wonderful representative from Students Demand Action, where young people were able to text to join that group, and free gun locks were given away. And then TRI had a table with lots of information as well. TRI's Youth Coalition has been around literally for 20 plus years. Several of our young people started at age 14, which is the average age, although we accept young people ages 9 to 17, and now they are in their 20s, 24, 28, 35, which is amazing. And so here are some of the ideas that they had that were placed around the walls with stickers. And we're in process of transcribing all of these things, but you can get an idea of what kinds of things that they said. But I just wanted to read out loud, as you're perusing the other information, to the future from Katie. One day your world is going to be amazing. However, today is not the day. Keep fighting the way I'm fighting. I'm going to keep fighting for you, and you keep fighting for me. You are worth everything that comes your way. Never stop moving forward. You have come so far, and you can go so much farther. Love, the past. And so, as I said, all of this is being transcribed, and there's lots and lots and lots of information about mental health Wellness Day. Chapel Hill Carborough schools or Orange County schools already have something in place that I'll forward, because it almost appears as if this is something that has been approved of by the state. Now, what they do is to have, as Jesse mentioned on April 25th, and I concur, is that the mental health day that they have actually takes place while everybody is in school. So we may want to look at that as a model. Gratitude, action items, stay connected with the people you met today, learn one thing about an organization represented today, share highlights from today with friends, contact us at any time. You will receive a follow-up email. And these are some of the people that were there that you may recognize from county commissioners, and the mayor came, and she wasn't able to stay very long, but she came and jotted down some of the things that she saw on the wall. So what's next? Youth and trusted adults, fill out the evaluation form. Let us know how we did today and what you'd like to see. Thank you all for sharing your Saturday with us. And that's it. Any questions, thoughts?
I have a question. That was great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Boone. Where did was this students from a variety of schools?
They were from a variety of schools, and we were so pleased to have the students from the mental health program initiative. So we're excited about that. Yes, but they're from different schools in Durham and other areas as well.
Thank you.
Majority being, I mean, there were 3 from Chapel Hill Carborough schools. Our coalition reaches beyond Durham, so that's why there were other schools, but they're having the same challenge. So they're feeling the same things and are concerned about the same things. It's amazing as we listen to different and various youth voices, and we do offer Spanish translation, but anyway, that their concerns are the same. I mean, it's amazing to hear how they each are concerned, what they're concerned about, what their wishes are, what their hopes are. And so I believe that we are reaching the youth voice and look forward to reaching other voices as well.
Great.
Mhm. Oh, I should say, I almost forgot. There were reporters at the hackathon from Spectrum News, and a couple of people said that they saw the coverage, but I couldn't find it. So I reached out to Spectrum News, a contact there, and they found them. So I just got them this evening and didn't have time to get them ready for tonight, but I will send the links to everybody in an email. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Before we move forward, I just want to make sure, Marcia, you were one of the first persons to kind of challenge us as a task force to really delve a little more into youth before our time is up. Do you have any reflections on some of these events that is going on so far?
Jesse's hand is up.
Yes, after Marcia, we'll get to Jesse.
Well, I just think it's great, and it's wonderful that you're building. Every month there is this event. I think this is also, as we've discussed, Dr. Boone, this could be helpful, the youth voice in informing the ethnodrama proposal that this task force unanimously approved. And that, the more that we can, have youth leadership, the closer we are going to be. I'm curious to learn more about the role of caring adults in the school, of doing, circles where students can really turn and face one another, and have a process to express their feelings and process their feelings and create strategies of safety and wellness too. So this is really exciting, and I'm really grateful. Thank you so much.
Jesse.
Thanks again, y'all. I guess I just had a question for the group. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. I think I'm just trying to think through what other groups, networks might exist that are, for youth, led by youth, that are getting at this issue. I think I'm just sitting with the observation, at least, that and this is certainly not to trivialize or minimize. Let me be clear about that. Small is all. You got to start somewhere. And I'm sitting with the collective of students from Durham School of Technology. I'm sitting with the handful or so that gathered for the Youth Hackathon, right? And I don't want to see any of these young people tokenized. I'm curious, right? I know, for example, DPSF within the whole schools approach has focused at Neal and Southern. So they might have some people in their network that are more activated. I know I've heard about points of connection at Jordan. I can't think of any particular person in this moment that's a young person at Jordan now, but it just feels like there are some particular points of connection there that might start to feed into who we intentionally invite to be at a PAC 3 meeting. I'm saying PAC 3 because that's my PAC, and it's literally across the street from where I live. And Javanya knows this because we're in the same district. But whether it's a PAC meeting or some other kind of community conversation context, just trying to actually bring people together more in that same spirit, so that they can connect with one another and continue to kind of build that power, share more stories, make more connections. I feel like that's just something that I feel like maybe that's my bias as a connector. I'm always trying to bring people together, but I'm just sort of sitting with that set of observations that like there is room for additional representation across Durham in terms of like the youth, and wondering like who are the people that are close to this work, close to this pain, close to home. Right, I'm seeing you in the chat, Dr. Wanda. Exactly, and just wondering if there are folks here that stand out, or that come to mind more immediately, so that we can point them towards one another.
Absolutely, there are. Sammy had mentioned some in the chat, and I'll defer to him. He has his hand up.
Yeah, so I mentioned a couple of organizations, groups in the chat. Some of those I've been involved in the past. Some of those I've gone to events that they've put together, and they've seemed to get a good turnout. So it's not only engaging student leaders, but also just your regular everyday students that might not be as involved. If you're trying to reach out to Jordan, even though he's coming to the end of his term, I know the student body president there, he could probably tell me or tell us as a group who to turn to in terms of students to reach out to there. I also have contacts with Hillside as well. I know Hillside has been very vocal, but I used to work student government there, so I could probably reach out there. They probably know some people at some other Durham public schools as well. And that's mainly on the high school level. If we want to start reaching down to the middle school level as well, I think that's something we could consider. It really will just take a lot of heavy lifting, I guess, to just really search for those groups. But yeah, that's kind of the stuff I know in terms of networking.
Thank you, Samuel. I would like to mention that at the hackathon, while the students were working on their proposals and their ideas, I was talking to Dr. Hardiman and Dr. Boone, and we were talking about how do we normalize these types of conversations. And again, as she mentioned, I'll speak on behalf of TRI, on her behalf, that TRI has monthly meetings with you, and many of the students that were there are members of TRI, and they had an opportunity to speak about the difference that outlet has made for them. During my many years as a high school teacher, many of my students were involved in in TRI as well. So I believe that is one great effort and one great place we can keep this conversation going. And Dr. Boone has said she's willing and ready to continue to talk about this with her during her monthly meetings with TRI Youth, and invite others to get involved. It's just trying to find, the spaces. Anyone who does the events in Durham knows that can be a challenge. And I do want to mention it, since I mentioned that, to thank Durham Public Schools for their help in the space that we used. You probably don't know yet as a task force, but the budget that we approved was not, that we suggested in our recommendation, was not fully funded. And there was a lot of in-kind services and in-kind giftings from DPS, from TRI, to make sure that that this was a successful. There were volunteers who gave, so we were not able to fulfill the budget that we asked for, but there was a lot of people, including Dr. Boone's group, DPS, Dr. Calvin Bullock, who stepped up and really made sure that everything was going to go smoothly, and it did. Board Member Lewis.
That thing pops up on me when I'm trying to get off mute. I don't want to take a lot of time, but it was just so important to hear the youth say, I didn't know other youth felt this way, having the community conversations that they're actually talking with each other. And Dr. Logan, who is one of the identified trusted adults at the table, he said, it felt different engaging the youth outside of our school environment. So, and the young lady who said, I want to do this every week. I'm like, okay, I have 3 kids, a full-time job, and I'm on a school board. I don't know if I can do this every week, right? But I want to honor that. These conversations have to keep going, to Jesse's point, and somebody needs to be able to hold that space. So Wanda holds a space of it, this group holds a space of it. And there were 5 organizations that came together for the community conversations, but they're small orgs. And they're just trying to get through and doing their own programming. So who's going to be able to keep that connection? And that is a heavy lift. I'm talking to Coop, I'm talking to Hearts, I'm talking to Student Urgency, I'm talking to DPS students, mental health. And I had that access. What would it look like for that to be supported? And I know we have Durham Office on Youth, and Laura holds that type of support as well. But there are a lot of youth out there. So what does that look like in different pockets across the county and regions that it has to happen? And just to let you know too, Dr. Mabenga, he said, he's very interested in what it looks like to have a mental health day during the school day. And his team, again, they're working on a recommendation and a way to bring this forward with all the options. And when I talked to Dr. Laverne Maddox Perry, she herself said too, like, after the state of urgency, we knew how many students wanted to talk. Our office is working on a way of pushing in to have some more of these conversations during the school day, throughout the school year. So it is going to happen in the schools. We have to find how it can happen in the community spaces as well. These layered approaches and layered times.
Thank you so much. Dr. Boone?
One of the things that was really heartwarming to me is that we have young people that are not necessarily comfortable in some of the spaces that we hold because of their living situations, because of how they perceive their disadvantage or their actual disadvantage. And one of the reasons that it was important for me to mix it up so that people didn't sit with their organizational groups or, who they felt comfortable with, was because just like adults that don't talk to each other because there are differences that we have, but our commonness is our humanity. And I wanted that to be realized at this event, and it was. There were 3 young ladies who, when they first came in, and wherever they lived is wherever they lived, but at first they said, I don't have any experience with gun violence. And they were encouraged to think about it for a minute. And then each one of them said that either an uncle died from gun violence or a grandfather, and it wasn't necessarily a high school student. And so that's still trauma that exists. And we had a group of the parents that were there. We had a conversation with the parents because they have trauma. So, I mean, it's so important to include the individual, whomever that is, interpersonal, how they respond and react to each other, community, schools, and societal. And I think they would want to see adults model, not the conversation, but model the way that we interact with each other so that they would have a sense of what it really looks like and feels like to be a part of the community. And I saw that, and it was wonderful. So
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. As someone who, again, has spent a lot of time around high school students, you can always tell when, and so all of them weren't high school, some were actually middle elementary. You can always tell when they're comfortable and can just and know that they can just be themselves, and that is what I witnessed, and that always brings me joy to see young people being in a space doing something very important, and at the same time, just being themselves, and finding joy in the moment, even though we were talking about very serious concerns, they were able to still, again, with using the arts, the music and so forth, and just engaging with each other, there were still moments of joy that really touched my heart. I know it touched Mayor O'Neill's heart as well. Rose?
I just wanted to call out that Isaiah rejoined us. I didn't know if there was anything else he wanted to share, since he kind of got cut off in the question of how the task force could support their work. And also, I wasn't sure if Isaiah has gotten a full explanation of what this task force is and what it does, because that might also affect that answer as well.
Right. And I was about to give Isaiah one more chance before we move to the more technical part about our report. Isaiah, we are a group that was brought together by the Board of Education, the City Council, the County Commission, to look at alternative ways, things that we possibly haven't tried yet to keep our community safe and well. And so we divided into different subcommittees, we call them roundtables, look at all different aspects of safety and wellness issues such as SROs in schools, youth in general. We're looking at criminal justice systems, looking at violence prevention. I'm sure I left one out. What am I missing? We're just looking and
Crisis
trying to.
response,
Thank you, crisis
violence
response.
prevention, SROs, youth, and the criminal legal one.
Exactly. Thank you, Jesse. And so what we be commissioned to do is to listen to our community and find out what's happening and how you feel. It's one of the reasons that we supported the youth hackathon to prevent gun violence and other things. So before we go into our next area, Isaiah, and you're welcome to stay if you like. Did you have any parting comments or questions for us?
Yes. Don't mind my little brother in the background. But I wanted to answer the question that I got cut off on. My phone had died, so I didn't know. What was the question that I don't know. I don't
I
remember
think
the question.
Samuel had asked, go for it, Samuel, you're here now.
Yeah, let me see if my memory is serving me right. I think my question was, what specifically could the task force do to help you all in your effort so that you all can achieve the goals you set out for yourselves?
So I feel like what I was saying, but I was talking for like a whole 10 minutes, not knowing my phone was dead. I really want to I think one of the biggest ways that this could be spread is just like by people talking and spreading awareness. I don't remember what I said exactly before, but it was something about my main goal is just to achieve people to spread it more, because once one person hears it and more people hear it, then most people would just they'll look into it, seem interested, and try to figure out like if they could be a part of it and see how they could help and create a change. Most likely be the change. I think that's what I said. I hope so.
Yeah, we picked up what you put down. That's what you said. Thanks for reiterating it, so it's clear and on the record in your own voice.
No problem.
We mentioned earlier that on Instagram it's DPS Mental Health, and on Twitter it's Mental Health DPS. So it's just reversed for those who did like me and tried to find it on Twitter using that handle. So thank you so much for what again, there's always a lot of background work before we come to these meetings. The school that Isaiah goes to, the same school my grandson graduated from, and of course they're on a closer to a college schedule. They are really deeply into finishing out and going to exams. So we really hustled to try to get someone from his group to come tonight. So it really felt last minute. I'm so glad that you were able to take the time to join us, Isaiah, and we wish you and your colleagues much success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isaiah.
No problem. Thank you all for what you do and what you're going to be doing in the future.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on Monday at CCB Plaza. We'll see you at the Bull.
I'll see y'all too. I will be there. I know I will be there.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
connect in person versus the Zooms.
Yeah.
awesome. So
Well-
before we move on to our next agenda item, I do want to again mention one thing that we did not talk about. Someone did mention Laura Khalil with the Office on Youth. One thing that Laura has done in the last, I'll say 7 years or so, is to advocate that on boards like this, boards and on the boards of the elected boards, all the commissions in the city and county, and that come up and deliberate on things that affect everyone, including youth, that they should consider having youth representatives. It was important on this task force that we have youth involved. And one thing that's really powerful, again, is Laura's voice in our community, asking and challenging everyone who has a commission or a task force, do you have any youth on this group? Or do you know what they're saying, what they're looking for? So I want to give her a shout out for that advocacy. We are going to move on now to Rose. She's going to talk a little bit about the final report.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and my plan for today is to kind of report back real quick on some of what we very briefly talked about at last month's roundtable on exactly what y'all would like the final report to look like. And then I put together some draft outlines for the final report as a whole, and then individual roundtable sections. And these are very much just first drafts. I was hoping to be able to have it out to everyone beforehand so people could kind of read and look through on their own time. My plan now, since I was unable to get it together for that, is to present it here, have some initial discussions, and then send out those drafts via email, like with the revised drafts, for people to provide even more feedback over the next couple of weeks. And then hopefully by June, we can have kind of a roughly finalized outline that I'm sure will also change over the course of writing, but at least a starting point for everyone to work from. So for this, I would say, like, feel free to just like pop up and interrupt me. I'll try and like keep an eye on when people raise their hands and things like that, but just feel free to unmute and ask questions or bring up issues or anything like that. And I'll try and keep an eye on the chat as well. Okay, but in terms of what we talked about last time, kind of condensing down what everyone who gave input was saying in terms of audiences who we want to read the final report. It feels like the sort of first top line ones were all of the elected officials, so the Durham City Council, the county commissioners, the board members from the Board of Education, and then in addition, sort of slightly out from that, local government staff, city, county, DPS staff and administrators, leaders of local advocacy organizations, and then media and other storytellers and documentarians. Other audiences that were mentioned but kind of didn't rise to the top were youth, survivors of violence, formerly incarcerated Durhamites, and other decision makers across North Carolina. So I kind of want to pause here and see if this sort of generally sounds about right, that like the top audiences are those kind of 4 bullet points, but then also the other audiences that folks want to speak to are kind of in the bottom. And if there are any groups that y'all feel are really important that this report should speak to that aren't reflected here, we should talk about that now. Manju.
I maybe would have reversed it, actually. I'm thinking of our primary audience as Durham residents across city, county, folks who benefit from being a part of Durham Public Schools, and that our final report is really like a tool that community members are able to use to spark the conversations that help create more conversations about community safety and wellness, and that allow and encourage Durham residents to bring these visions to their electeds, but less like the primary focus at this stage is these specific proposals. Like, I think they're useful, but I don't think, like, I think there's a policy program, and I think it's a rallying cry. Like, my hope is that what we produce inspires more folks to speak up, to push for more, to run for office, to get more involved.
So I think my question back from that, and then question to the group, would be, do others feel the same way, that the sort of priorities amongst these two groups should be flipped? And if they are flipped, like, especially Manju, like, how do you think that would affect how we, like, how would we write the report in a different way if it is geared more towards community members and those specific audiences versus the elected officials?
Yeah, on that tip, my hope is that it would be super accessible, lots of illustrations, lots of visuals, pop out quotes from our listening sessions throughout this journey, stuff that like makes people want to pass it around, like stuff that makes folks want to convene a gathering in their church basement and like pass it out at tables and circle up discussions around it.
Yeah, Mike, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think there's a distinction between two things. One, between the kind of community awareness campaign we're going to launch when we're ready, and then the final written document. And that's certainly by definition, the community awareness campaign would be, the second audience. I think we would by necessity also need to write a pretty compelling, all the things that Manju just referenced, a kind of an executive summary, for want of a better term, rather than just a bulk report, because nobody's going to slog through it all, community members, media. So we need to do that anyway, the kind of rallying cry part, and then the as Xavier was outlining before, that those kind of 3 different areas of policy proposal, programmatic proposal would be in there for those electeds, because we, following our initial charge, it was to present a report pretty much just to them, but that is also the kind of report that gets put on the shelf. So I think Manju's point's well taken in the kind of the front end public PR part of it, and who would be writing a overarching summary for. And then to Wanda's point in the chat, are faith-based organizations represented in this list? I would think, another key audience would be large allied organizations and kind of collectives like the PA, like Durham Can, like DCIA, like Durham for All, that naturally, Durham Bound Police, organizations that have been doing the work and are a natural place to share the report with and have us come talk to, that can continue the conversations like Manju's talking about in their own organizations that already bring lots of community people together.
Dr. Boone?
I was just thinking about a report that I read cover to cover, that maybe we want to look at that model, and that is the community health assessment from Durham County. and not so much, of course, everything that's in it, but how it's laid out and the readability of it. And then also they have a section on what more can be done, groups that are involved. And they also have disparities in that. But, so just the way that it's laid out, but the other part, and the other one is the North Carolina Institutes of Medicine. Their document has graphics, a summary, and then some other information. So those are the two ones that I just thought of now. Otherwise, I would have mentioned them early, but I think that would be something that encompasses the pieces that we want, and it's laid out in a beautiful way, easy to read way.
Okay. And Manju put a link in the chat. Is that the one that you're referencing?
Community, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
What was the other one you mentioned, Dr. Boone?
It's the North Carolina Institutes of Medicine 2030.
Okay. And I'm making notes in the chat so I can capture the chat and come back and note all this down.
Okay.
So I guess for others who haven't sort of spoken yet, where do other folks land on the sort of community groups take priority versus talking to elected officials take priority? I think there are a lot of commonalities in how you would speak to both groups, but I think probably if you're, and other people who've written reports and stuff, please tell me whether you agree or disagree. But I think with elected officials, it tends to want to be a little bit more like outcome oriented if you're speaking to elected officials, of like, here's the high level takeaway, here's the like, the bang you're going to get for your buck, so to speak, versus I think with community members, you kind of, I think community members are still interested in outcomes and impact, but more plain language, more story, that type of thing would be kind of how I would see the difference in those reports taking shape. Dr. Boone, did you have other stuff that you wanted to add?
No, sorry.
Yeah, I wish Nori were here. I feel like the Youth Listening Project report felt like a tool that was a both and. I'm sitting with how this is presented and really appreciate Manju's reflection that like the bottom constituency is not less important than, like, it's not other. And for me, it's not even so much the flip, but I mean, I don't know. Part of me is like, yes, power is always at play. Let's center those that are often decentered from processes. And I feel like a lot of what we do as a task force is rooted in that. And so hopefully our report reflects that. And I don't think that keeps us from naming that we want local electeds and electeds across North Carolina and beyond to read our report. I don't think those things are in tension or in competition. And I just think and I think maybe this is a part of what I'm hearing Manju say, right, is that we don't want a report that makes it hard for youth, survivors of violence, so on and so forth, people that may typically be removed or decentered from reports like these, from processes like this. We don't want them to not have access to the document and not feel like it's a useful, relevant thing that they would want to sit down and read or want to sit down and talk about. Because this should be a reflection of the community. So ideally, community members all across Durham will want to read the report. If you care about alternatives to policing and law enforcement, it's something worth discussing. And of course, people have a lot going on. Just because someone hasn't read it doesn't mean they don't care. But I think that hopefully, I would say D, all of the above, right? Like, so I don't know. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of asking the question so that we create the document, we create the report in a way that, again, makes it as accessible to intended audiences. In my mind, because we really are seeking to reflect the community. I think we can center some of the less visible, less audible folks in our communities and trust that it will still be accessible for an elected and still just as legitimate, right? So I'm sitting in that tension, but like, don't really think it's a tension where it has to be an either or, because I want everybody on this list to read the report. And I don't see that as a rank or other. Respectfully.
Dr. Boone?
I'm wondering how creative we can be with the report. And the reason that I ask that is because for our youth coalition, they take science-based information and then they make the message their own as they glean it from the materials that they're given. And how they make it their own is to draw, do music, poetry, artwork, dance. And so I'm wondering if there are images that the young people can add to this document that will be read by other young people then, including some of the information from the listening sessions. So if it could be creative like that, I don't think it would be something that an elected official, et cetera, would not be interested in. That may even make them more interested. And maybe that could be something that is a forward to each section that is in the report.
So before I go to Mike, I think just to summarize what I'm hearing is that folks want to keep the community groups at top of mind, but be able to speak to all of these groups. And I think based on my discussions with everyone, and I also looked to Marcia and Xavier, I don't think there's a limit to how creative this report can be, other than y'all's capacity in making those things happen. And sort of how I've thought about project managing this is sort of having a group that's thinking about like the design and the artwork of the report, and a group thinking about community engagement. And I think either or both of those groups could pull in some of the things that Dr. Boone was just talking about if others are also interested in it. So speak up if that is not an accurate reflection of what folks are thinking. And then Mike, you had your hand up.
Let me see if anybody else wants to respond to that. That sounds like a good summary, but we were just saying, I thought another bit of context, and it seems a bit, maybe contradicting myself or just thinking further into it. But having said, our initial charge with our bylaws was to present this report, at the behest of these three bodies. But, let's be honest, given the rather lukewarm reception we've received so far, at least from one body who's opined upon us and the other two who really haven't, we maybe not necessarily want to bank upon getting a close, careful read from those three bodies, which means all the more to energize the community behind it is all the more important, as well as specific reports to go before these three, that these three elected bodies have to approve and spend money on if they choose to. Now that there's still a lot of time between now and then, we may hear more. I should say what we've heard from our liaisons, especially in the school board, is very much supportive of our efforts around the SROs and the youth, et cetera, and the community and the county commission may respond differently. But so it's just don't necessarily want to count on those three bodies as they're currently constituted waiting with rapt, with bated breath and keep paying rapt attention. So the extent it can be accessible to the broader community and get media coverage and conversations going and momentum behind it, all to the better.
So just calling out that Samuel was talking about adding music, drawing inspiration from the souls of Black folk, and then Jesse, go for it.
Thank you. I love Najib. I used to work with Najib Manju. Manju just suggested working with an illustrator that's local. We worked together at the National, and I was literally thinking about the National Teen Council today because my students are graduating. Anyway, I've digressed. That's how Nori and I met. Okay, I'm done with that. What I was going to say is two things. One, I think that Mike, I hear what you're saying, and these things are so dynamic. An election is about to happen soon. Like, I don't think. Again, I feel like I just want to reiterate that, like, all of the above. Like, there's no reason why, as someone that was appointed by the city, you can trust that if the stars align and I cross paths with any of our elected, I'm gonna be like, hi, so good to see you. Have you read the report? When can we talk about, like, so, yeah, like, I think I hear what you're saying about making sure that we have engagement with community members. And even still, I think we all know that power is always at play, and there's so many different dynamics as it relates to how we are able to engage. We use what we have to get where we're going. And at the end of the day, I think everyone that is elected in Durham wants Durham to be well and safe. And that should be and is more than enough ground to stand on to engage our electeds with the feedback that we've gathered over the last 2 years. So I certainly don't think that just because as dynamics have shifted, we may not have had as full-throated, full-bellied support here or there, that it means that people don't care or that we should put our attention elsewhere. I think in some ways that's just more motivation, I think, to lean in and invite people in into these important conversations. Like Isaiah was saying, we just need to spread the word. We need to continue welcoming people into these conversations because it matters. And we have the privilege to be a part of this task force and really kind of create a new table for more of those conversations. I can't remember the second thing I was going to say, so that's fine.
All right.
And I say point well taken, and great timing with the fall election. Now's the time to get it out there. So it's part of the election conversation. Totally.
Really briefly, Rose, just this, I'm all for ideas, y'all. But if y'all not trying to actually help get it done, we got to be careful because time is ticking, and it's great to be creative and throw things out there. That's how you get volunteers. Like, oh, you got this idea, we're going to do it. So it's like just making sure that we can be as thoughtful with our our ideas, because Rose is doing a great job of guiding this process, but we don't want to make it harder by just like saying big things and then being like, oh, but I don't have time to actually do that. That would just be cute because we're the ones that need to get this done. So that was the second thing. Okay, now I'm gonna be quiet. Thank you for letting me.
I appreciate that point, Jesse. So Xavier, and then we have 10 minutes left, and I do want to run some of the initial outlines by y'all. You're muted, Xavier.
I love, I was so busy trying to lower my hand, I forgot to unmute myself. I love the energy behind this final report. I hope this is sustained as we go to the finish line. And I was going to say, just for a reminder that what we see on the screen is not something that Rose put together. This is what we said. This is how it came out. This is how our responses came out. So it's always great to get member check-in and say, here's what you said. Is this what you meant? So I love the dynamics behind this conversation. And Rose, where I'm sure you have this in your presentation that we hope we get to the finish line on, could you really quickly, because Rose and I and Marsha meet every week in the same manner that we met with Dwayne every week. And we've been talking about this. And many of the things that you're talking about are part of the structure. Can you talk again about how you've structured the work, Rose? And if it's in your presentation, then move forward with that. But I think that will help with this creativity part.
Yeah, so let me just move forward to the last one on my slide of just next steps, which doesn't have exactly how we've split the work up, but so next steps would be bring big recommendations. And if you didn't see Xavier's email about kind of the sort of like 3 different categories of recommendations and the kind of anything that has a sort of big budget impacts or a specific budget or request attached to it should be brought up for first reading by June. So start writing drafts of final report sections. So the kind of first level of work that's going to happen is in individual roundtables. People will work on the individual report section sort of as they volunteered. And I think I've been in touch with most people at this point about like time and interest. And I think that most roundtables have a general idea of who's going to do the writing and how people are going to contribute to things. I'm going to organize a first meeting of the design team in early June. So I think that would be more on like the sort of like art side of things. And also what Samuel and I kind of put our heads together and he shared some information with me about how we think we could make the report more accessible to youth, and art and visualizing ideas was definitely part of that. So not just artwork, but also visualizing the ideas in the report. So I'll put together a first meeting for everyone who said they were interested in that in early June. If you're not sure if you've told me that you're interested in that and you are, let me know. Or if you just have like ideas of people that you think we could collaborate with, message me. And then I'm also going to organize a meeting of the folks who said they wanted to be involved in the sort of community engagement side sometime in either June or July. Sort of we'll reach out to those folks and see what they think the best timeline is on that. So that's kind of how the work is being done. And then end of July, beginning of August, there's a group of us who kind of agreed to like coalesce everything into a cohesive draft so that we can ideally have a first draft of the final report in August, and then a second reading of the final report in September with a buffer month where we can just focus on community engagement, or if best laid plans go awry, we have a buffer month. So that's kind of what the timeline is going to look like moving forward. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Xavier or Marsha?
No, that's great. That was really thorough, and thanks.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody was aware that these buckets do exist for all these things we just finished talking about. So it's really going to be handled well. Feel free to go through your slides as you like.
All right, so let me just go to format goals. I think we talked about some of this already. And again, this is hopefully just sort of a reflection of what you all have been sharing with me, so that it should be visually appealing, including local art if possible. Talked about kind of an iceberg format of having skimmable areas where you can kind of quickly understand what's happening. But for the folks who are going to want to in-depth read the entire report, have that information available. So kind of think of those dual goals to the kind of all of the above focus. And then I threw this out as an initial target, but I'm very open to people pushing back on this. I kind of looked up like because about an hour is the max amount of time folks thought people would spend reading this, for the folks who do want to spend an hour reading this and not just 5 to 10 minutes, that the average amount of pages a person can read in an hour is about 40 pages. So for the main piece of the report, aiming for it to be around 40 pages. So that's kind of the target that I put for the timeline. I don't know how well supported that is by the literature, but that is what the Google SEO engine told me. Okay, so this is the general first draft of the final report outline. Again, I'll send these out in Google Docs where people can like comment and add thoughts. And then again, I'll sort of like coalesce and maybe we can kind of all land on something via email or at the next task force meeting. So start with a 2-page executive summary. Xavier and Marsha have agreed to write a sort of statement of goals and values for the top of the report that I'm estimating maybe about 3 pages. Including why this task force was formed, what it aimed to achieve. Glossary was one of the features that folks wanted to put in, so I thought we could put that in. and then each of the individual roundtable things. You'll notice, Jesse, I think you might be, Jesse and Xavier are the only two from that one. I put school safety and wellness there just as an asterisk, just because I wasn't sure if SRO is actually the most informative title for that section. But I think that should be a discussion among that roundtable, but just sort of put that in as a folder. And the order of all of these things can change. So have those specific sections aiming for 6 pages or less, have a table of recommendations. Those are the columns that I was thinking of that table having right now: recommendation, sort of change entity, what the status is, like prescriptions for repair is already being implemented or has it not been implemented at all, budget if applicable. And then the appendices is where we can kind of just shove everything else, and that wouldn't be included in the 40 pages, but it would be like full pages of all the proposals, any other reports, a list of resources, that kind of thing. So for time, to try and get us out of here on time, I'm not going to ask for feedback now, but definitely provide feedback via email. The roundtable section outline, in talking to some of the roundtables, people thought it would be helpful to have an outline that was kind of like a series of prompts. So that's what I put together. Again, this is a first draft, so any and all of this can change. But I thought there would be kind of like an introduction, starting with like, what's the goal of the roundtable? What are the main issues is the first paragraph, maybe 2 to 6 paragraphs on what do we know about these issues in Durham. So this is where people can share statistics, listening session information, like a particularly resonant story, anything like that. I think that can take a lot of different forms. Doesn't have to be a full 6 paragraphs. If that seems like way too little, way too much, let me know. And then a conclusion paragraph that just sort of summarizes, you know, and this is what we're about to do the recommendations in. This is sort of a draft format for what each individual recommendation could look like. I know someone talked about wanting to make sure that those recommendations are stated as action statements. So I like, this could be a horrible way to rephrase this, but I took a stab at like, instead of just saying prescriptions for repair, what would an action-oriented version of that look like? Max 3 short paragraphs describing what it is, knowing that the full text is going to be in the appendix, and then a quick 1 to 2 sentence status update. So that would be, again, a sort of parallel format. And then the last section in each roundtable would be a kind of call to action with like, first, what do elected officials or government organizations need to do? And maybe with what we just talked about it, we flip the first and second paragraphs. Another paragraph on what can community leaders or invested members of the public do? And then what issues still need further investigation? Who do you want to pass the baton to? That sort of a thing. And then I'm also just have sort of, you'll see in the outline that I send out to everyone, just sort of lists to help me put together the appendix of like, this wouldn't be in the actual section, but you would list out any acronyms or glossary terms so that I can compile a glossary, any resources you want on an appendix list, any documents that you want to put in that appendix beyond the full proposals. So that's kind of what the outline is looking right now. We don't have time to discuss this, but we probably should at the next meeting. So I'm just going to put a pin in this. And this was brought up by Jennifer. We should come to agreement on certain language things in the report. Like, are we going to use first person language for folks who are incarcerated, folks experiencing homelessness? Like, that's one way to describe that. Unhoused persons is another. People who are engaging in drug use, those types of things we should kind of coalesce around. Race and ethnicity language, Hispanic versus Latinx versus Hispanic/Latinx. If we're talking about groups of racialized minorities, do we say racialized minorities? Do we say BIPOC? That kind of thing. Law enforcement language. And then any other language unity concerns that folks have. So I think I'm just going to stop sharing from now. And maybe if anyone has any like things that they want to say top of line, throw them in the chat. And otherwise, I'll kind of see what I can put together based on people's feedback, based on what people say when I send around the documents, and then probably have a discussion at the next task force meeting, especially on the language stuff and just sort of coming to an agreement about these things. And yeah, I'm trying to do my best to shepherd this process along. So any feedback that you have for me, happy to hear it. Just trying to honor the work that you all are doing and make this report. I can't promise that it's going to be painless, but I'll try and keep it moving the best that I can. Okay, I think that's all I got. So I'll pass it back over to Xavier and Marcia.
So I would like to apologize to Marsha. Normally, we do a really good job of balancing out, and you've heard my voice far too much, so I apologize, Marsha. We'll do a better job in the next meeting when we do our agenda to pass the baton back and forth and to other members. But Rose, I love what's happening. I hope you can see what's going on in the chat. This is going to be a very interesting process, one that I'm very looking forward to being part of. Marsha?
Yeah, I love your voice. This is great. And thank you, Rose. This is excellent. This is really just what we need. And it's really exciting. And those questions, we really do need to have clarity and consensus on how we are going to speak. And it's great. Any other comments, folks?
It just occurred to me that these proposals are going to be coming fast and furious, especially in June. So maybe we don't have time now, but maybe offline or at the beginning of the June meeting, we might come to some agreement about how we can streamline the process of consideration. Like, can an email reading count as the first reading? Can we be prepared to do some voting via email like we did with the hackathon? Just because we're not going to be talking about 1 or 2 proposals per each monthly meeting. We're talking about 15, well, a lot. So that's a lot to get through. So the more reading and discussion we can have before the meeting, understanding it's a public meeting and all the rest. I see the challenge. I don't have a good solution to it, but I know we don't want to get log jammed up and have lots and lots to try to get through in 2 months worth of meetings.
Gotcha.
I'm also just hoping that all of us really believe in the whole document. So I'm hoping that it's less like each of our roundtables has its own section that like our roundtable is consensed around, and more like the final document is something we all feel like we can stand behind and be in community advocating for. So I know we'll get there towards the latter phases of the project.
Great comment. We're at 7:32. So can we ready to close the meeting, Xavier? Okay. Would everyone mind just taking a moment and adding and sharing in the chat what you're taking with you from this great time together? Again, as Manju left with a few months ago, revolutionary love. So I'll say that one. And here we go. And I don't see anything in the chat. Let's see, motivation, lights at the end of the tunnel, and all joy and terror they inspire. Joy, youth leaders, passion, gratitude, gladness. Thanks, Rose. Appreciating you in advance. Awash with info. I've saved the chat 30 times. Y'all are marvelous. It is, again, such a joy and honor to serve with you all. And we will see you June 14th and be together at least in roundtables before that. Good night, everyone. And thank you, thank you, thank you.